Hi, Paul. How you doing?
Fantastic, Baldwin. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Welcome back to Europe, Paul. You just came back from Uzbekistan.
I
How
did
was
indeed. I
that?
get to go to all the I get to go to all the exotic destinations.
Yeah, but this was your first time, I think, right? You hadn't been there before.
Yeah, I've been to Georgia and Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan, and Mongolia more recently, but I'd never been to Uzbekistan. And what I expected and what I found were very, very different things.
I was checking out some of the video footage you shot. Yeah, I was also quite surprised. So one of the first things I saw was this really big supermarket, a very fast train. It was really counterintuitive, even looking at that from what you filmed. But being there must have been something else.
Yeah, when from the outside in, you hear a lot about Uzbekistan, the capital control problem, the convertibility of the currency. There's a lot of more politically linked negative news flow that comes out of the country as well about the authoritarian government and bad news about corporates. You more recently had, I think it was MTS out of Russia, got into trouble, and then you have various different high-profile members of the first family, name known names that hit the headlines for all the wrong reasons. So yeah, it's not exactly much like the rest of that part of the world. Usually, what you read in the mainstream media in the West is generally negative. So I went there not expecting to see a great deal. To be honest, I thought it was going to be a much more muted version of what I'd seen in Azerbaijan and Mongolia, post-Soviet problems that all the parts of the world faced. And they were there. They're not going to try and look through rose-tinted glasses. They were still, to the echoes of the Soviet Union and all the challenges that brings. But in fact, what I found was just a really vibrant economy, and met several one of the guys who we were with called them the Richard Bransons of Uzbekistan. And I
All
don't think
right.
he was far off the mark by what he said.
Okay, so wow. But what took you there, Paul? You went out there with investors or something like that, or was it a field trip? What was it?
Yeah, I've done over the years. I've worked with and for a manager that focuses on that part of the world, and every year they group investors out there to a different country, and that's how I ended up going to Kazakhstan. And the first year was First year was Baku in Azerbaijan. The second year was Tbilisi in Georgia. The third year was in Kazakhstan in Aktau and Almaty, and this year was in Uzbekistan at Tashkent and Samarkand. And it was a smaller group than usual, but long-term investors, people who've been professional investors for a long time and worked in the financial services industry for a long time. And every year, and including this year and more so this year, never cease to be amazed at how positively surprised these guys are. They've seen it all. They've seen every opportunity around the world, usually from a desk in London or New York, to go out there and to see the vibrant economy that develops in spite of all of the challenges that Uzbekistan faces. I think is a real eye-opener for people. And that's really what we're trying to do with the platform. I've learned that over the years, and having these experiences in others, there's no substitute for putting somebody on the ground and letting them almost feel and smell and taste what it's like to be in the country amongst these different businesses and these opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Investors with cameras. How powerful is that? But yeah, so I guess our perception, these things tend to happen. I remember when I was years ago, I used to play these like video games, and you'd have to go in like a Delta squad or something into a territory. And one of the games I really loved playing had North Korea. It had this island north of Russia, but also Uzbekistan and Chad. So I guess they better take that out of the game now, because from what I can see, it was pretty. Okay, so I saw the big supermarket. I saw the fast train. What else did you go and visit businesses and companies, and what did you see?
Yeah, we met with some. I mean, 90% of the banking sector there is controlled and owned by the state. And we asked some of the people that we met there, what is your plans for the future? And our reference point for the region in this context was, and probably one of the biggest success stories so far, is Kazakhstan. And we always just assumed that the energy exporting nations of the region were happy to follow the path that Kazakhstan has. And actually, the response was quite different. They said, where do we want to be in 20 years' time? They pointed to Singapore. Sorry, they pointed to South Korea, which they have a good relationship with the South Koreans. In fact, they're helping them with their stock exchange development. And China, what is the state-directed capitalism, if you like. And we met with, as I said, the supermarket you saw on the deal. This was a guy that started 20 years ago with nothing, and he just started importing whatever he could, and there was nothing on the shelves in Tashkent in about 1994. And he's grown two businesses. One's a wholesale business. The other one is a wholesale distribution business in retail products, for supermarket products. The other one is the retail business itself, the supermarkets. And he's now, I think he's got about 18 stores. He's got 1,600 employees, and a six-figure million-dollar business. They're over $100 million. And he's built it all from scratch. And he's done it in spite or in the face of sometimes very long, protracted periods where he couldn't actually get dollars from the local currency to go and buy the goods that he needed to get abroad. And he's come up with some really interesting solutions to overcome that. And face of all of this would be impressive in New York or in London. This guy would have been impressive enough there, but to do it in a place like Uzbekistan is nothing short of miraculous. And yet they thrive. There was another guy similar in a different industry, fruit production, fruit juice, fruit concentrates, similar story from nothing. They just grew and grew and grew, and a substantially valuable business in the space of 20 years. And unlike several other parts of this part of the world, and obviously other parts of frontier markets and emerging markets in general, these guys didn't seem to have done so on the back of family affiliations with senior political circles or having found an oil well on their land or anything like that. It was all hard work and entrepreneurialism and sheer determination, and I didn't expect to find that in all places was Uzbekistan.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you get that with entrepreneurs over there. I mean, if they can make it there, they can make it anywhere. It's like, for those people who play golf, it's like those are the kind of guys that when your ball's in the sand trap, you just push it under to make the shot even more interesting. That's sort of like how they do business there. But then, but you mentioned something about South Korea helping them design a stock exchange. Does that place need a stock exchange right now? Is there enough opportunity to list, or what do you think about that?
There is, there's a lot of companies listed there. The free float is, again, much like many post-Soviet or even just frontier and emerging economy. The free float is very shallow and narrow. It's a very small percentage of the total shares available in the company, and a lot of these are state-owned entities. We met with the stock exchange, and they said that they've been planning to work to key milestones to develop with the input of the experience from the South Korean stock exchange, a proper stock exchange, a proper market that had a pipeline, that had depth and liquidity. But right now, no, there is listed companies there you can invest. It can be a long and protracted process in terms of getting a brokerage account set up, but it's possible. Certainly, the manager that I was there with, the fund manager that I was there with, they trade, and they're able to do so. So yeah, it's going to be a long process, but they're on the right track, I think.
Yeah, it's so the thing is also, I guess. So do you see a lot of foreigners there? Are there expats? Are there people from abroad trying to do things there, or is it all really local?
It was much more local than I've seen elsewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, is the answer to that. But I think that's a function of where their economy is right now, and yeah. My view is biased by spending most time in a resource-rich, resource exporting economies in Central Asia.
Yeah. So a lot of these countries sort of have a tie into Istanbul, or is it the same thing with Uzbekistan? That they have a sort of like routine connection to one of those economies, like either Russia or Turkey, or what does that look like?
Well, in terms of export markets, I think Kazakhstan is a big regional destination for them. They're keen to, especially when you meet with the likes of the soft commodities guys, the stuff like the fruit producer and the fruit concentrate, they're keen to export it to Europe. They have an excellent infrastructure that goes through the old Silk Route. A lot of container traffic that goes in and out of there. We flew back actually with Turkish Airways. So Istanbul is the most well-connected hub to that part of the world. Better connected actually than Moscow, which you would think historically would be a much different picture. But yeah, they have a great understanding of what the Western market looks like and the power that brings, but also into China as well. Obviously, it's a natural export partner for them in terms of geography.
Yeah, Turkish Airlines will fly you anywhere you want to go, but even if you want to go to the U.S., you can fly to Turkey first and then back. I mean, they're always they're doing this price dumping strategy. Very smart, I think. It's a little bit emulating what the Emirates did. They see that as an air bridge essentially to the world.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and culture-wise, so what are they? I think you mentioned something that they speak a Turkic language there. It's one of the Turkic variations, right?
Yeah, there was snippets of it, and having spent a lot of time in Azerbaijan, it sounded familiar. I don't speak Azeri or read it, but it sounded familiar, and it is derived from Turkey. Yeah, there's some. Obviously, there's the Russian speakers are all still there, which I guess will die out over time across the whole region. But it's Turkic language. Really, really friendly people. Really hospitable. And in terms of culture and history, it's what I didn't know until I went there. And you just take for granted. You take what you read, and you don't really dig that far into it. There's a very rich scientific history. There was an astronomer there who took measurements and built one of the first observatories back in the sort of the 13th, 14th century, I think, out in Samarkand. This is a formidable feat of engineering at the time. And they showed the measurements of certain celestial bodies, planets, stars, and he was almost exactly the same as what we're measuring today with modern instruments. And that's the level of sophistication and advance that they had in Uzbekistan, modern-day Uzbekistan, back on the Silk Road in Samarkand 600 years ago, 700 years ago.
Well, yeah, that's it. Back in those days, that was the first world, really. That was where all the I mean, it also
absolutely
it's the heart or the crossroads of the Silk Route. So I think by definition, their culture was woven around being quite worldly people. They saw people from all over the place passing through. I guess they probably
had a guide
world view than anybody would have in Europe in those days.
Yeah, we had a guide that took us around for a day, and there were often references, especially in terms of the architecture and the building of mosques and large complexes and sort of schools, and the architects often came from sort of old, ancient, what is now Iran, that part of the world, the Arabian Peninsula, and that's how far the old Uzbek Empire stretched back in the 14th, 15th centuries, up to Moscow, down to northern India, right through the Caucasus into modern-day Turkey and Eastern Europe. It was vast. I suppose much like the Mongol Empire as well. And today you forget all of that history with such a short memory. But over the past 2,000 years, there's been 3 or 4 of the major notable empires that have dominated this part of the world, and they've left behind a lot of history and culture along the way.
Well, what goes around comes around, right? They still have those genes flowing through their veins, so I guess we're going to be hearing a lot more about that region. All right, Paul.
Well, yeah, and just bringing it back to the platform, this is the message. These places that you would never think to look as an investor. That's what we're bringing to private investors around the world. We're getting these exciting projects that you just wouldn't get access to, and we're trying to put you in. Take first player mode. You talked about the computer game that you're on. You're sort of there. You're on the street.
Yeah.
Your market. You're next to this entrepreneur as he develops his business, and that's what we're aiming for. We'd love to fly everybody there from all over the world every single time, but it's the next best thing. We can try and put you in the room.
Yeah, but we got a solution for that, right, Paul? The next time you go, you're going to be wearing these kind of goggles, and we're going to film your whole trip, and then we're going to just basically trail behind you virtually. But that's where we're going with this. But yeah, but this is still a two-dimensional. There's a delay now, but our intention is clearly to make you discover these frontier markets as you've never seen them before, i.e., seeing them from there through the eyes of people there. So,
yes.
That's what we're building here. That's what we're trying to put together. We're trying to put together not only a platform with knowledge and stories and stuff like that, but our intention is clearly to take you to these markets in an audiovisual way.
Yes, absolutely.
It's going to be fun, Paul. It's going to be loads of fun.
That's the most important thing.
Okay, Paul. Thanks for that. Thanks for sharing your impressions. And everybody, there's a lot more where that came from. Go to the website, emergingfrontiers.com. Sign up for our list, because this way we can keep sharing those kind of insights and dimensions with you. We'd love to have you in our crowd, because we plan on changing the way finance works in the frontier markets. Signing out from Brussels and Paul from London. Until next time, sayonara.
See you next time.